Goose. Okay. That is.
All right, perfect.
All right. People have asked, where are all these people from my past? How can this story be possible? It seems so extreme, these things that happened in Arizona back in the day.
Right?
We've got DJ PRG from this infamous limo picture. This was
one night in Tucson.
This was Wild Woman's birthday. It was another person at limo's birthday. Wild Man chugged a whole bottle of GHB.
I'm so sorry to hear. I didn't even realize he had passed until like right before we were going to do the initial interview schedule. So
yeah,
sorry, man. I know you guys were like.
Before we get into your life story, what do you remember of that night in the limo?
Okay, so here's the missing link. So I was outside. Peter was like kind of staggering around the limo. I was smoking a cigarette, and he starts to nod out. He's losing consciousness rapidly. Two like young candy kids run up to me. They're like, "Oh my God, what's he on?" I'm like, "He's gonna be okay. Just took a little too much GHB." They beeline to the limo driver. He's already concerned, and they're like, "Oh my God, you got to call the hospital." And so that's how they called 911. I'm like, "Oh my God, what did I just do?" And so that was the missing link where the candy kids got the paramedics involved.
Did you see how many paramedics it took to carry him? There was like an army of them.
Yeah, that was I just remember it was sad too, because before that it was all birthday festivities, and then all of a sudden it just went really that was a quiet limo ride back up to Phoenix.
He said he woke up the next day in a hospital with a big gay doctor staring at his dick, and he had a catheter in it or something.
I've been that too. The one time that I was hospitalized for an overdose was actually GHB and alcohol, like 2000.
Oh, it's a bad combination, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it was like a little bit of beer in the afternoon. I took what I thought was a moderate dose, and I'm staying at my parents when this happened. Like it was just me and my mom there, but like totally blackout in the bathroom. I realized the bruise on my chest was from like, I think I went to my knees and kind of like bumped my chest against the sink. And then my mom has no idea what's going on. I just like come out all like, fish out and go pass out and then wake up with a room full of paramedics and cops.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let me just make it clear for the viewers then that you weren't part of the trafficking organization.
No.
You were a DJ. You were involved in the scene at the time. You were clicked up with us. We were in the limo on this particular night, and there was another character from my book Party Time. I call him Gangster Dan, the guy with no thumb.
Yes.
And he was robbing people in the rave community, and he was
very proudly. He loved boasting about it.
Yeah, he had loads of guns, weapons, all kinds of shit. He was clicked up with various gangs. And then one night we was in Quadrangles, and we got a call, and they said, "Look, he's in an apartment." I was at Acid Joey's actually in Quadrangles, and we got a call saying he's over in Quadrangles. So Wild Man went over there on his own. G-Dog wanted to go with him. That Wild Man's like, "I don't need a gun." He just goes over there. We think all hell's going to break loose. And then 10 minutes later, Wild Man comes back and he says, "I'm moving in with him." But you've got a Gangster Dan story, haven't you? Because
I do,
with the scout leader.
Yeah, it's literally one of the most surreal examples of like suburban life in Scottsdale getting really weird. So around 10 or so, I was in Cub Scouts and like a year of Boy Scouts after that. My scout leader was this guy that lived around the corner. I became really good friends with his son over the years. And his parents, it was an interesting story because they're from West Virginia. They found out at some point along the way, their house was on a Civil War battleground. So they collected a nice sum of money, moved out to Scottsdale. They're having a good time, kept everything together. But like once his parents got divorced, I think that was one of the main instigators, and just his dad jumped in with like hey, I got 2 teenage sons, let's have some fun. His dad started doing a lot of GHB, and one night I go over there. I think, I can't remember if I was on break from Arizona State, but I was staying at my parents that night. Just go over there, and we're hanging out for a while. I could tell there's like kind of a heated conversation going on between Dan and my friend. And he asked my friend to put me on the phone. Now, for as hard as he tried to portray himself, he was like, in a really like endearing way, at least on that level, he was like, he kind of fanboyed with me. You know, he would be like dicks to everyone else to be like, hey, PRG, you know, and so he has my friend hand the phone off to me. And just really nonchalantly, he's like, hey, what's up, Rob? Yeah, just hang out over there, bro. I want to show you something, which was awful advice. So I'm like, okay, this sounds kind of sketchy, but I'll see what's going on. I find out like as time's going on, there was like whatever, like an ounce or something of coke involved, and someone wasn't getting paid. So by the time they showed up, my friend's dad, as a safety measure, which escalated things dramatically, took a shotgun out, put it on the bed, and not knowing that like when Dan and his friend came in, they were, you know, it was like a well-coordinated home invasion of sorts. So they scouted out all the rooms. They wanted to make sure it was safe, see the shotgun. So then all of a sudden it escalates right out the gate. And at one point, when things are still really tense, I'm literally thinking about running out the back door, jumping over the fence, and like running around the corner. It was like maybe like a block to my parents' place. I didn't do that. And then things simmered down, phone calls were made. And the guy there with Dan was literally, and I knew him kind of, more acquaintances. He was literally like, you could have gotten this guy killed just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's like, just to reiterate, this was my Cub Scout leader, you know, and that's like really like a perfect example of like how, even though like Scottsdale is a pretty, you know, tame suburban place, I always managed to find weird situations there, like really weird.
People in the UK, people in the UK have a hard time comprehending this. It seems to them like something out of Breaking Bad. But could you just perhaps explain to people in the UK what the Valley of the Spawn was like back then, how prolific weapons were, how many all kinds of mafia characters. There's the New Mexican mafia, there's gangbangers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you just like set the picture for people what it was like?
Absolutely. So there was this interesting dichotomy in the rave scene back then where it would be like people that were, you know, all about plur, you know, the peace, love, unity, respect, but they're kind of gangster too, you know. And when I first got involved in the scene, it was like, you know, I'd see a few like dealers here and there kind of scattered around different clubs, but like between, what was it? I started to go, what got me into the whole thing was I went to Tunnel and Limelight at like the end of the peak of the club kid era. So I got to see like it's sensory overload, amazing. When I came back to Arizona, it was like a really small scene, to where I was almost disappointed. But then like and you were at ground zero for all this too. It's like between 95 and 97, like when Prodigy and Chemical Brothers broke, it just exploded, you know. So all of a sudden you know about the economy that created, you know. And on my end too, it's like I realized eventually, I'm glad I caught this, that like that experience on my end with the DJing really like it kind of fucked up my work ethic for a while, because like I did the math, like back then it was like a supply and demand thing, you know. By the 2000s, everyone was becoming a DJ, turntables were out selling guitars. But back then the scene's exploding. I'm like, you know, still kind of learning how to beat match and stuff, and all of a sudden I'm getting booked for gigs. And like I did the math for like 99 or 2000, I did a Camel Bartenders ball gig. I was getting paid like $12 a minute for that, you know. And then as an aside, I remember as I like started to get exposed more to the English song legend, it was like I had heard I don't remember who say that, like, you know, one of the things was there was all these you know, small time people moving stuff, and you kind of came in, like, consolidated it into like you know what I'm saying, because the market was there, and so, you know, it was there for someone to do that. But it, like, once the scene started blowing up, it was crazy because it was no longer this core group of, like, you know, it was very familiar at first. The scene was so small that, like, that it was inevitable. Once I started seeing, for example, more kids from Chaparral and Scottsdale coming out, it was like really a sign that, like, it was getting to the point where, like, anyone that liked to do any type of, like, I don't know, risque, whatever, that has like a will to be wild was starting to go to parties, you know, and so, like, I mean, I'd like to think I definitely developed my DJ skills enough to justify the bookings, but, like, so much of it was being in the right place at the right time.
So is that when Sammy the Bull's crew moved in? Was when the Scottsdale people, Axis Radius, all that stuff?
You know what? It was I think I had said we will call her Misty for the purposes of interview, who, that's kind of how I came into your orbit. I was nice and safely on the outside of it, you know, just kind of as an observer, enjoying the perks. But sorry, I totally lost my train of thought.
Misty.
Yeah. Oh man,
when you came into our orbit.
Yeah, and then when it was damn it, I just had a total brain fart.
I was asking you about, you know, Sammy the Bull's crew moving into the scene.
Oh yeah. Okay,
Axis Radius.
That was a Sammy the Bull thing. So
yeah,
what was that? There was a club. Yeah, it was at
Scottsdale
University. Well, the first time I ever heard about them, and I didn't know, you know, any link with Sammy the Bull. I just remember Misty outside this club that was at University in Rural for a while, like, pointing to some, like, younger guys at the door that, like, you know, very much met the description of, like, the Devil Dogs dudes that, you know, as I came to know it later. And she said something about, like, that was like the other crew. You know what I'm saying? It was like, it was a little bit.
Is that the club in Tempe that became known as Club Freedom?
No, this was I'm trying to. It's actually
University and Rural.
It wasn't it. Yeah.
Is it Scottsdale or Tempe?
No, it was Tempe.
Okay.
And you know what? It was either there or McClintock, but I think it was Rural. But anyway, so she pointed out, like, I knew there was this other crew out there.
Yeah.
And at that point, I don't even really think that I knew who Sammy the Bull was. But in retrospect, like, once you got busted, it was like, and I kind of knew the full story more. It was really fascinating because I ended up, just through, you know, dating Misty, like, just like witnessing a lot of the no, just you know, she was the one that told me about Sammy the Bull, but I think what was it, 2000, right? This was kind of like one of the things that, like, created the tension that then led to us breaking up.
Let me just clarify something for the viewers then. So, you know, I've just recently done a documentary of National Geographic, how he busted the bull about the Gravano XC ring and my XC ring. And I've learned through doing this that Sammy the Bull really didn't have a clue what was going on. He was in his house. All he did was give his son some money. That was his indictment for the ring. So it was Mike Papa who was running the ring. Then Gerard Gravano came in. They were the ones at street level. A lot of people at street level were claiming Sammy the Bull. But then years later, it all came out, you know, what actually unfolded. Now, the Devil Dogs were an enforcement arm of the Gravano organization.
Right,
who
right.
used to beat people up and bark and yelp like dogs as they did it. And they were
That was I didn't know that actually.
yeah. So just for the viewers so they understand what we're talking about properly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
little background.
So what was your first introduction to Wildman?
I I think it was when Misty. Yeah, it was like right after we started dating, and I started like coming more into your orbit and met Wildman. I think it was like it was like summer or fall of '99, and it's just like he was just such a character. I didn't know him that well, but I mean he's like straight out of a Guy Ritchie movie, and so yeah, that's how I came to know of him and Wild Woman as well. And then what I was going to say too, because this is like kind of a slice of that historical timeline with what happened with you and Sammy. So like late winter, spring of '99, Misty had a friend in Georgia. I don't know if you remember this, DJ friend who wanted like $10,000 worth of pills.
Oh my God, this is the story. Yeah.
And so I knew like through secondhand accounts that basically, as you should, you wanted to know the details. When you heard them, you're like, no, it's not something I want to be on board with. And so through someone else that was working for you, who said they had another plug, he took the money and went to go, like, this is like the beginning of the Sammy the Bull Blast, and went to the other supplier. And when he alleged that he got pulled over afterwards and like I forget if it was the money or I think he may have already had the pills. And then he was released. No one believed him. Like, it was just like, this guy totally ripped you off. I remember picking up the phone one night. Yeah, this is still well within the landline era. And Misty's on the phone with her friend who had given the $10,000. And as we're picking up the phone, and it was like, just a really vague threat, like, you need to handle this, or, we're going to have to come out there and handle this. So I'm just like, oh my God, what has she gotten into? And it was like, there was other things going on too, but it was like, that was part of like what really started to exacerbate the cracks that were showing in the relationship. And as far as like, your focus on the criminal justice system and, things related to it, it's really sad what happened. I don't know if you know this with her, but when we started dating, I knew she was working for you to some extent, and she used to be a stewardess. And so I think at the end of the summer, once, like, honestly, the first night I was like, oh, this is like a one night stand after the club. We ended up dating. And so by the end of summer, I'm like, maybe it's time to think about what's next in life, and she seemed receptive to that. She started training with, I think, Southwest to go back into being a stewardess. And of all the things that could screw that, like, she's making an earnest attempt to get her life right. We always had house parties, like my sister and I and our rotating third roommate would always have house parties. And our buddy, he's like a very aloof, eccentric artist, let's say, he forgot to turn his lights on. They had open containers in the car and got pulled over. And so Misty got a ticket for that. In the end, after going through all her training to become a stewardess and try to get her life on track, they fired her over an open container.
Just let me elaborate on some of this then for the viewers, because you've gone over a lot of information. So what Rob here is saying is that Misty, who was associated with us, had someone gave her $10,000 to buy pills, and a guy who was working for me was also working for Sammy the Bull's crew. So that guy, he took the 10,000. I didn't have product, so he says, right, I'm gonna go and take this to Sammy the Bull's crew, and that's what he did. And he said he got pulled over, and the money was gone. And that's the story that Wildman's told this story many times. So I wasn't aware that any of this had happened, but Wildman found out before me. So Wildman went and dealt with that guy. He punched him so hard in the face the guy's tooth ended up so deeply lodged between his knuckles, he couldn't get them out. Wildman hates going hospitals, so he was forced to go to hospital, and they took it out, and then they were about to sew it up, but he didn't want to wait around for them to sew it up. He just walked out the hospital, and they were like just shaking their head at him. So he went home, and he had some fish. He had some fishing wire, and he just sewed. He's just sewed it.
DIY, baby.
With fishing wire. Yeah.
Oh
so did you see the wild man or wild woman doing anything crazy?
Outside of the night in Tucson? You know what? I think like for the most part, anything that I saw was just them being the characters that they are, you know, but I was always, obviously with, dating who I was, I get a little breakdown of like the way things are. So I knew clearly Peter served in an enforcement capacity. And so like when there was a couple times at the end where we would fight, we would like get into a big argument, and that would be the threat. Like, how come Peter over here? There was like, I'll never know, obviously, but between when Sammy the Bull got busted and then you did, which was like what, about a year apart?
Yeah. Things were going downhill fast at that point.
Yeah.
I got busted May 16th, 2002.
May 16th, 2000. Oh yeah, that's right. Because I was
because some of the Gravano people, there was an original round of them getting busted, and then a lot of them just got out on bail bond, and they went right back to it. So then there was another round of them getting busted again.
Okay. Yeah, right back in.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, I remember this unrelated note. I remember when it was like my 25th birthday or so, and I'd heard, a month or two earlier that he got busted. And I just remember I pulled up that New Times article. I was a little elevated on some birthday blow at that point. And I'm just, and my friend and his girlfriend are passed out, and I'm just like on the computer, like just like scrolling through the New Times article. And when I saw those mugshots, man, it was just like, I know all but two of these people, and I probably know the other two now. I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you, but Cody and I went to high school together.
Oh,
I never really knew him that well.
Oh my goodness! So Cody Bates was one of my right-hand guys. He stayed sober, so he had a lot of responsibility, and he's actually next to Wildman in the limo right there. You can see him at the back.
Peace.
Yeah. There's Rob right now where my finger is. Cody and Wildman at the back. And sadly, Cody got depressed when we all got arrested. He went on heroin, and his parents sent him to a rehabilitation center run by Scientologists, where he was put on drugs with a side effect of suicidal thoughts, and he hung himself. And if people want to research that, go online, Courtney Bates. You can find that case online because it was settled. Yeah,
that's so tragic.
Yeah, definitely. And
I never saw that. That was a surprise too, to see him pop back up in the like the Rave underground, because I remember, like, I never really knew him that well in high school, but I remember I think he like only went to Chaparral for a couple of years and then went to another school. But I remember when he was underclassman, he was totally like early 90s like metalhead type guy. And then like one day it was like the last person I expected to pop up at a rave, but like I said, like so many people from Chaparral and Scottsdale started going.
Yeah, and so we're a couple of the only ones alive out the main men. I mean, if you look at, so you got Wildman, you've got Joey Crack, you got Acid Joey, Tucson Charlie, you've got Big Micah, you've got Jerry the Prophet Hoey. You've got, honestly, there's literally about 5 to 10 of the main men dead from that period, because I think our lifestyles were so high risk, and those people were so hardcore, and so a lot of them just burnt out and ended up just dead one way or the other.
It was it was a sober, sombering moment, like let's say about 10 years ago, a few years into me being on Facebook, where it just became crystal clear that like our average lifespans are not up there with the general population. It's like, and it's haunting because like some usually it filters it out, but when I'm doing like invites for an event page for a music event, I've had a couple times where it's like I've sent out all the invites to everyone who's alive on my friends list, and I pulled it up where it's like the rest in peace list. Like
Wow.
and it really drives the point home of just like,
Yeah.
and it's like there's some people that I would have never thought wouldn't make it, but it's a hard lifestyle. And I noticed, I think in the 2000s, like once there was a pair of DJs that literally like they died. They both had fatal overdoses in the same hotel room over the course of a binge there on meth and heroin.
Was that in Vegas? But they're from Arizona.
They're from Arizona. I think it happened in Arizona too.
Oh, in Arizona.
Yeah, they just went on a binge that never never ended.
All right. So like during this period then, when we were all lit up, there was two houses that I remember, like people just go to after party at these two houses. There was the tall one's house, who was claiming English. And then there was the house belonging to the two deceased, Micah and the Prophet, Jerry. Could you describe what these after parties were like? Because you were gigging at something.
We should start with the after party to end all after party. No, when the second or third music party, which was Swell Records for background, for a while, like the main promotional crew.
Was that the one that got raided by the cops?
Yeah, it was. They had two in a row. Like music, the first music went over fine. The second one, it was the one that Kyoki played. There was one in the desert that got busted, and there was like choppers in the desert. And then there was one that was in downtown Phoenix. And it was just like that whole night had this, it was like Kyoki's energy just like exploded in the crowd. You can just feel like there was someone outside like naked and overdosing. It was just crazy.
I escaped from that one getting raided in Kyoki's limo. It was so surreal.
Oh, yeah, I know. Surreal. A lot of crossover too. Like,
yeah.
I think that New Times article they talked about, like, wasn't he like locked in the bathroom, like in the bathtub?
Scottsdale Hilton Villas. Yeah, we had to knock the door down to bring him back to life.
So like when that broke up, we all ended up at refills, at my DJ partner's place, and I mean it was great. It was like sometimes when you had the after parties and it was like the party got broken up early, it's like that energy doesn't just go away. It's still, people are still like ready to keep going. So it was like a raging after party. Right out of the gate, but then Kyoki showed up, and for me, I mean, like, yeah, superstar DJ Kyoki. For me, on a personal level, because like that night, like I went to Tunnel Limelight once, Limelight twice, but Limelight in particular, I went to Disco 2000. That was like that changed the trajectory of my life. I was like punk and alternative before that, and I came back like, I think I want to become a DJ. But like, it's a very sentimental. Even though it was like, there's a dark side of that shit too. Like I remember my sister's from the Bronx being like, see that guy, he's on Angel Dust, but it was just insane. But like even though like my DJ ego had started to expand at that point, it was still enough of a thing where it's like, there's a little bit of fanboy me. So when he showed up, it's like, this is fucking cool. And like I met him 3 times, and every time I met a different person because the circumstances were very different. And at this party, he showed up on all the drugs, and it was like Phil and I are DJing, and I remember him like sitting. It was like he was sitting back in this chair in the corner, like it was his throat. He's like, more break beat. And so then eventually he goes on, and it was like watching. It was like watching like a surreal cartoon character DJ, like just so much unnecessary stuff, but it was awesome. He was like, he wasn't just like clapping like crazy. He was like, and like just like every movement was just like so much ecstasy going on. But that was
Yeah, his
that was,
his bodyguard said they went all over the country gigging, and they get a
yeah,
pill here, a line there, and the reason they kept coming back to Arizona is we're just like dump an ounce of this in front of them and like 100 pills in front of them.
yeah. I remember out of state artists being kind of impressed, like, damn, you guys know how to do it out here in the desert. But yeah, that was the first time I met him. The second time was at Crowbar downtown, when they would have like house DJs play there on Sunday night.
Sunday night, yeah.
So it was like we may have had a few drinks or some shit, but he was very lucid. He was told, this was like the guy behind the drugs, and I had a really like, normal conversation with him. Told him like, that night at Limelight changed my life. I remember being like, it changed my life too, man, and just really, really cool guy. And then the third time I saw him was just really brief. I went to Winter Music Conference in Ultra in 2009, and he was about to play the pool party. So I like said hi to him real quick, but he's like posing with the girls and stuff, like superstar DJ Kyoki. But yeah, that first night was just insane. It was a great night too.
Well, he must still be partying because there was a news story that went out not so long ago in years saying that a dead body was found in his house with like 100,000 cash and thousands of pills and ounces of drugs and all kinds of shit.
They just found the body there.
I think the guy had overdosed or something. It was that he was like an executive. He was a high up executive from one of the I don't know, media company or something. Yeah.
Wow. That's what was I gonna say? I remember like at that party, like John, tall one, coming back to where the DJ booth was, like, dude, Kyoki just followed Phil to the bedroom and tried to fuck him or some shit like that. It was just like thumbs up, the weirdest of those days. But yeah, that I remember like that was always like a thing that people would anticipate, like how much is Kyoki going to be like just out of his head. And like, he was kind of notorious for being like a good DJ when he was like lucid, but that, sometimes the drugs became the bigger president. And I mean, to be a resident DJ at Limelight back then, that's like definitely something that's going to, put you on the fast-paced life.
So what was the craziest thing you ever personally experienced in the rave scene back then?
That's a good question. Craziest thing I experienced.
It's just like anything could happen.
I could probably think of something crazier. One of the most eventful, just like holy shit nights in my experience with the Phoenix rave scene was it was so weird, like 95 or 96 when my sister and I started going to the parties. It was like my dad went on it was like the first time I was on the World Wide Web internet. He like went on to Hyperreal. I don't know if you ever saw that site, but like it was like a rave electronic music message board, and then they had a link to the Airwood vaults where it was like all this like drug information. And so like 95 or 96, my dad's like telling my sister, like, I know what goes on at these raves. By the end of 96, he's like, I'll give you some money if you want to invest in a rave. So, and I was like, well, I got to take advantage of this. It ended up snowballing. It's like much bigger because there was another event that like Mikey and the Idea guys and like Karma from Liquid Karma and the kids on the Carpet Crew were going to throw. So we ended up merging those. And when I say we, I actually, again, through just like a weird twist of chance events, my one of my best friends from high school came over right after I got my turntables when I came home for Christmas break, since they closed down the dorms at Arizona State. And I noticed like once he got to the turntables, he didn't want to step away. He was really, really mesmerized by it. And so in a twist of things that happened in Scottsdale. Like his dad was like, I don't know if he ever went to college eventually, but he's like, well, you could start your freshman year of college next year, or I'll give you money to start a record store. And so that's how Ground Zero Records came about.
Oh wow.
That's how I met Dan too, because he was hanging out there. And yeah, so that was definitely one of my bigger strokes of good luck that helped me get off my feet, because like now it's a totally different story. It's like I can go, I try to make a rule of like, because I believe in supporting underground artists. Like I know a lot of DJs just like, you know, pirate everything they play. You know, I like to you know, support artists because I am an artist myself. But like back then you had this really big scarcity thing, like that doesn't exist anymore. Like if there's a hit track, you know, or let's say it's not a hit track, it's just something that a record store would normally stock 1 or 2 copies of, and when they're gone, they may or may not ever be reordered. So in the context of that scarcity, it's like, I mean, what better thing could you have as a DJ than to have your friend start a record store? And then all of that was like when it was really going like full-blown breakbeat with what I was playing. It's like before all those records hit the floor, I'm like sorting through them all, you know, and that store didn't even last a full year. It was funny too, because it like basically first 6 months, it might've looked kind of promising. Last 6 months, it pretty much turned into people selling weed out of the background. Although that was like when the quality of pot that we got went way up, because all of a sudden, like we had a cool spot on Mill Avenue, you know, everyone wants to be part of the rave scene. And so yeah, that was the end result there. But I think that record store opened in like August of '96 and was like closed by like within like 10 months or so. But it was a fun ride, you know, being right on Mill.
Did you ever see Acid Joey up to any of his antics?
I did. Like Joey's one of those people that never really knew him well. Any interactions I have were really good, but it's like there's a handful of people, many of which are in your book, where before the scene blew up, like I said, it was very much a tight core group of people that, you know, knew each other.
From Chupa and Swell.
Chupa, yeah. Chupa's what really got me sucked into the Phoenix racing, because it was very different. It was like very small, more underground. You know, the beats were a little scarier than the house at Limelight. So it took some getting used to. But Joey's just one of those people that like I don't remember Phoenix underground scene without Joey. Like he'd be one of the, you know, first few months of me going out to Chupa. I remember him.
Yeah, Chupa, just for people who are watching then. So Chupa, it was a location Eddie Amador had in a very central gangbanger infested area. I mean, literally you would park outside there. The whole street was crazy with homeless gang members. Sadly, a female got shot coming out of Chupa on a drive-by. Yeah, I wasn't there on that occasion, but yeah, it was a very dangerous neighborhood. But that's why I met Acid Joey. People just stood around watching him dance, and he was big, but he was so fluid. He was always on ketamine.
And he definitely was one of the. I thought it was so awesome. Like once I spent enough time in the scene to recognize this, it's like just like in New York, I was so, especially with psychedelics involved during my attendance, with the liquid dancing, you know, where like people are just fluidly, like, you know, hands are doing a little, you know, kind of like psychedelic breakdancing, you know. But when I came back to Phoenix, you started to see that more, but you really didn't see that style. It was awesome. There was a Phoenix style of dancing, you know. It was like there was different variations of it, but Joey was very much like one of those people that kind of like exemplified that Phoenix underground style.
I've always said he should have been in music videos. And to think back then, like Sandra Collins was just starting out, Eddie Amador was just starting out, and they've both got massive. But the person who's got the biggest is Marcus Schultz. Man, he's got help. The following he's got now.
I talked to him. Actually, I think it was the only time I ever really had a conversation with him, because I was like, I was with Ground Zero first, and then as soon as Ground Zero closed down, it was like, eventually it was like, oh yeah, I'm a Swell DJ. But at first it was like when I got a job at Swell, and I'm like, hey Russ, can I put that I'm a Swell DJ on the flyer? It was like, I have arrived. But da, 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 da,
Marcus Schultz.
yeah, so Marcus, like Plastic Records was his thing. And until I started dating Misty, I was like, I played a lot of trance at the beginning. I didn't really play trance again until it was like, when you have a girlfriend that's like, that gets that much enjoyment out of it. Wasn't that I disliked it before? I'm like, I don't play more trance. But Marcus and I were not in the same orbit. Like I'd see him around all the time. I went to the work sometimes, but
because he had a radio show, didn't he? Was it the Edge Factor?
Yeah, the Edge Factor. Yeah. And so
we used to listen to that religiously. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was so good. It was so good. And he was one of the speakers at a clinic at the Winter Music Conference in 2009. And seeing as how we're both in Phoenix, I never really knew that. I chatted with him real quick afterwards, and you could tell that not even that he has a big ego, but it was like, he had definitely arrived by then. It's crazy. Like same thing with Z Trip too, where and we didn't have any idea where any of this stuff was going back then. Obviously it started blowing up, but it was like, as far as like longevity and stuff like that, like who would have thought, like, 25 years later, Z-Chip, he was ranked high back then, but like Marcus is like, it's not like, oh yeah, he's from Phoenix and he did pretty good. It's like Marcus is like a name in trance, just like Eddie Amador with house music.
Yeah.
And like Phoenix has a lot to be proud of as far as like the contribution of our underground scene.
They've done absolutely phenomenal. I remember when Sandra Collins was hitting me up for tapes that my dad was sending me over from the UK, from the Manchester rave scene, when this was like 91, 92, around then, I think. Yeah.
I was going to ask you too, like, were you a little ahead of the learning curve, having like the British advantage with?
Well, that was the thing. So I'd visited my aunt in Arizona when I was a teenager in like the 80s. And the music was like, it varied from like country and Western to like some dance stations like Michael Jackson, Prince, and then the rock stuff, Metallica. But there was no, and then when I came in 91, the rave scene had been going quite strong in the UK for 2 or 3 years. There was like the Summer of Love was 1989. So I came over and I was expecting to go raves in 1991 in Arizona, and I'm banging my head against the wall. Yeah. But then I eventually got introduced to, I think I went to a club called the Blue Iguana. I went to a gay bar called, this was before the Works. It was in downtown Phoenix. Oh shit, what was it called? The Silver Dollar Club. So through Club Iguana, Silver Dollar Club, and eventually Swell. That's where I met Sandra Collins, Eddie Amador, Pete Salez, and just clicked into the rave scene. And over time, I started investing in the parties and the party favors, and it just grew from there. Yeah.
Wait, do you remember about what year your first party was? Like that you threw?
So people were asking me to invest when I was still a stockbroker.
Yeah.
And I think I quit being a stockbroker about 96, 97. So I was actually making investments in the parties like 94, 95, around then probably. Yeah.
Okay. So like right around the time I was coming into it. Yeah. Like I went to Limelight and Tunnel in July of 94. And then my sister started going to like Swell parties and I think whatever other crews were around back then. People Forever, like pretty much within a couple of months. I guess probably because I was like still really occupied, like involved with the punk scene and playing in one of my handful of punk bands at that point. So I just didn't really jump into it in the going out level. I was getting a lot of like, CDs of like house and stuff like that at Z Records. But it wasn't until New Year's Eve night going into 95, I went to Swell's Beyond party. And, I had fun that night, but going from like the Limelight to, like, I'm sure there were other parties that were bigger back then, but for whatever reason, it was just like maybe maybe 50 people, you know, and it was at the, I don't know if you remember the Jam Shack warehouse, but that was a big spot. So it was like tons of sound, you know, good DJs, but it was just like, where are the people?
I felt the same as you. I'm come from Manchester,
Yeah,
where
yeah. So
you've got like tens of thousands of people raves like, out in the countryside and stuff. Get to Arizona, and it's just like the scene's just started, isn't it?
yeah,
It's not like the numbers weren't there. But I was thinking we got to do something about this. But I had to make the money first to contribute.
yeah, it was definitely you know, like in those early days, I mean, especially when there's like very few regulations you have to worry about when it's out underground, it's like it started to become, I remember actually, speaking of the money involved with the rave scene, I remember Russ was Swell getting pissed off because God, what was that guy's name? His name slipped my mind right now, but there was one writer in particular for New Times that did most of the rave reporting. And he mentioned something like, I guess the IRS gave Russ a call because
Oh shit!
reading that article about like tens of thousands of dollars of cash exchanging hands over the course of a single night. The IRS is like, really?
That wasn't my cash. That was just an allegation, allegedly.
Oh, speaking of your cash, I think it was so fascinating to, I mean, there's so many parts of reading part that were fascinating, but like it was so interesting. One second.
I have to see if some of the other DJs want to tell their story, like Emil. I'll just say DJ Gary. I won't say his last name because I know he's
I still talk to Emil actually.
Okay, yeah. He might see this and think he'll step up and tell his.
Yeah, he does love to tell the story. I'm glad that him and I reconnected too, because it's like obviously if I'm playing, if I got into playing breakbeat heavily, like he was, you know, the guy that was, you know, the biggest breakbeat DJ at that point. So it's like we've, you know, grown up together at some point, but it's like I kind of like fall back into the little brother role with him because Emil just, you know, he wants to like spread the knowledge. So I'm just like, I'm just gonna shut up. All right. Thanks, Emil. But I love the guys. Like it was really cool. Like when I started going to Rave, I think a lot of people, it's like it's so new and it's so like, you know, sensory overload and it's kind of mysterious and stuff, you know, and so it was like, you know, I mean, a fanboy by my word, I had like a lot of admiration, respect for like that small handful of underground DJs that were around when I started. And it was cool, especially once I became a Swell DJ, to like slowly like become friends with these people to where, you know, like now it's like we're all peers. But at first it was like, oh my God, I know DJ Emil, you know. But the one thing that I was going to mention, you asked what the weirdest thing that ever happened was. It wasn't, maybe weird is not the best word. It was that's the point I was going to make earlier. It was fascinating reading your book on these aspects where I'd heard the other side of the story, like orgasmic bliss. Like from what I heard, yeah, and I was in the car with John. I don't know if he was on the phone with you. It was a very tense call, you know. And so it's like the other side is like, well, this person did this, the money did this, and then I read your side. I'm like, that's not what I was told, you know. And yeah, so it's very interesting to see the full story there. And I think I was gonna say too, when we were talking about Acid Joey, it's like I wasn't I might have been at the party, but I didn't see that event where he dressed up like a priest. But just the way you wrote that, it was such like it painted such like a vivid picture of like, you know, like right down to the people like, you can't do that, you know, and other people think it's hilarious.
He was always up to something. It was nonstop with him. It was a good vibe. Yeah. So you know, we all ended up incarcerated, and I've written about that as well, about the Arizona jail and prison system. You had an experience of that yourself as well, didn't you? What
I
was
did.
it? What was it like for you going in there?
I avoided felony charges, so that's a big plus. But starting in 2004, I got a couple of DUIs where the first one was
That's drunk driving for the UK
yeah,
audience. Yeah.
yeah, drunk driving. And so for the first one, I just you book an appointment with jail, like you show up on this day and you do your 24 hours, whatever. Second time you do 48 hours. So those were pretty benign experiences. It's like you're on the work release side at that point, which is a very, you've got people going in and out all day. So it's like contraband city. Like I remember there's like one of the bigger tents was like the store, so you could get, cigarettes, weed, whatever you needed to get in there. But, that was just pop in, pop out. Actually, the most eventful thing about the first time is I thought, like in my little naive Scottsdale head, that it was going to be like, oh, it's 24 hours and you're out. And I'm like, they held me longer because like, it's fucking 25 hours. They're like, you can wait 28 hours now. But those, were quick and easy. But then off that second DUI, they almost said prescribed. They put a requirement in there where I had to do like drug and alcohol awareness classes. And like after the months after the second DUI, I would say that would be one of my big declines with substance abuse, where like, and the main thing was like meth started coming into the picture more, which I was kind of a holdout on that for a while. But going to the DUI classes then became a much lower priority. And I would be staying at friend's place while whatever the notice would go to my parents' house. And if my mom and I were talking at that point, then I just wouldn't know about the court date. And then, I'd have some interaction with the police where I'd end up like the first 2 times, like it was like a week and a half, you go to court, they're like, all right, you're released on a probation, finish your DUI classes. The first time that happened with a probation violation, it was an awful day. I tried to go into what is it? No, I meant Lark, whatever the detox clinic in Mesa was, not, and very naively, so I'm thinking like they can actually do something for meth. It's like alcohol, benzos, opiates. So it was like the first time I went in there, it was like I was supposed to go to that detox clinic. My mom dropped me off at like a friend of a friend's place to hang out before I called the van to come pick me up. And this guy's like, you want to roll? Like before you go up there, I'm like, oh, I'll give him something to detox. And I end up popping the pill and then called, they're out of beds. So, and I'm in like Northeast Scottsdale, almost a Fountain House. So it's like, it's getting cold out. It's like wintertime. And even though it was like maybe like not even 2 miles, I ended up taking a taxi back to my mom's the next day. Just not only am I like going through like meth withdrawals, I also have the ecstasy hangover. So my aunt came by at that point when like it was just me lying in bed, and I don't think she knew that. Well, she didn't know that I had done ecstasy before, but she was like very. I mean, initially it was like based on care, but it was like she was just very mean, I guess, for lack of a better word. Just like yelling at me about like how I gotta go to detox. I'm like, I tried to go, but whatever, like that. I think the next day after that, I forget why I got notified by my parents, but it's like I needed to go get cigarettes. I ended up breaking the door. Like there's like a top lock on my parents' door. She was locking it when she went to work to keep her tweaker son out of her bedroom. So I ended up breaking that after fighting with her on the phone. Get enough change to go get cigarettes, go down the hill. It's like 115 to Via Linda. And my grandma lived right by there. So after I got cigarettes, I went over there and I heard my aunt like yelling at my grandma, like, you're enabling him and all this stuff. And so I was like full blown meth weirdo mode at that point. So like where they had like a enclosed boat area. So I'm in there like texting, like fucking my family. My family members got scared because I'm just saying all this crazy shit, like, probably like, threatening to do some stupid shit, like kill myself, whatever. When I like opened up the gate to come out of that boat enclosure, the front yard, the cops out front, but they're like inside where the cop cars are. So I'm like, oh, I should get out of here. So I go back up to the nearest shopping center and I'm like calling everyone. I'm calling Emil at one point, like, dude, I need to like get out of here. Like the police are looking for me and shit. And my aunt ended up, she sold me out so bad. She's like, I ended up on the phone with her and she's like, you want some Burger King or are you hungry? So we're in the drive-thru to Burger King and all of a sudden, like all the Scottsdale PD come rolling in. And it was, without getting into details, it was just a very messy arrest. Not like I was resisting, but it was just
please go into detail.
It was like, no, literally, it was like, you guys just shoot me, like this shit, this tweaker stuff. No, but it was like, so like I ended up having to do my first stint of more than 48 hours for the second DUI. And it was like a week and a half in, go to court, and then they released you on probation. But this is like, I was coming off the biggest meth, like the most I'd ever use on a regular basis, because I was dating some girl who was like until he got busted, like he was like the Central Phoenix, like gay meth kingpin. And so we just had tons of metal time. And then I get busted. And so I'm like detoxing off this in jail. Just like, for those of you who haven't done meth, it's like, it's not like opiate detox where it's just like very physical thing. It's like your brain is just short circuiting and trying to adjust to like incarceration life. And that very difficult. And after a while, like it's just such an uncomfortable process going through the horseshoe.
Please describe describe going through the horseshoe in detail.
No, I always like, it was literally like the trauma of going through it. The first time I was like, my brain just like blocked it out.
What was it like? What was it like arriving at the horseshoe first?
I mean, I'm still on like the shock phase when I arrived there the first time, but it's like, I didn't even know like what the purpose of that facility was at first. I'm just like, and they're like sorting into maximum security and minimum security, and who's going where. And but it just feels like you're like a game piece where the DOs are just like, all right, you go over here, and you're moving around. Sometimes you might like have 3 other people in there, bench to sleep on. Sometimes it might be wall-to-wall people on the floor. It's just absolutely insane. And during this process, my appetite is just raging back because obviously, some meth use can lead to a little malnourishment. So when they do, they always have all the new inmates go through like a medication consult. Well, the med check, whatever. They see a nurse, ask what medications on, all that stuff, find out, what medications need to have right away. And like I politely said to one of the guards before I went in there, I'm like, I feel like I'm ready to like collapse from like lack of blood sugar. Like, can you please give me some juice or something? And he's like, yeah, classic answer. Like, we'll see what we can do. But in my head, I was like, oh, give me the juice afterwards. So with a different DO, it was like, I didn't like throw like a huge fit or anything. It was more like desperation. Like, wait, he said I could get you. Like, I really need just something. And the response to that was, I think he like threw me to the ground. Like, I ended up in solitary for like a couple hours, but it was just like, so, like from an earnest point of like, officer, I know I'm a bad person, but I'm going to put the desperation. Can you help me? And the answer was just to just exacerbate the trauma more by doing that. And that was like the first 24, 40 hours going through the horseshoe. Then in that case, since I was minimum security, I went to Durango. Durango is an awesome place where you always get to hear people talk about how there's asbestos in the ceiling, and you know, you gotta worry about the race politics and all that stuff there. But
At least it blows people's minds in the UK because the prisons here don't have race politics.
Right.
So could you explain what that means?
It's so organized. I was explained by a pseudo skinhead type dude later that it's like, when I was like questioning the system, he's like, you look like a good guy. You might never go to prison. Most of these motherfuckers are going to prison. So we are teaching them how it's going to be. It's like prison 101. One of the aspects, definitely more so on the West Coast in America than out East, is like, you have like everything divided up into like whites are woods for it's like sort of for Packer woods. That would be like the precursor to the Aryan Brotherhood when you go to prison. The blacks are kinfolk. And then this is where it gets kind of random. It's interesting when you first learn it. It's like, it's not like all Latinos roll together. You have the Chicanos, which are the Mexican Americans, which have a very distinctly different culture than someone who's like a vaquero from, rural Mexico. And then you have the Paisa, which are the Mexican nationals, a lot of them illegals, obviously. And what happens is, because they are like on the INS, they're waiting to, get dealt with by immigration. So they don't get sentenced to tent city. They kind of like accumulate in places like Durango, to where they are like the dominant political force in there. But it's like, it's so organized where when you come into your pod, when you go into the tents, every race has a greeter, which that comes up, they introduce themselves, they show you the ropes, they read you the list of 20 rules or whatever it is as far as the do's and don'ts. Every race has an enforcer, and then there's a head and a vice head, president, vice president type arrangement. So it's this very organized thing. And just jumping around here, the third time I got arrested for those probation violation things, they wised up to my routine. They're like, no, don't say that you're going to go to DUI classes. You got 30 days. You're off paper after that. Get out of our face. So when I go to Tent City, that time for the second half of the 30 days, it kind of like ratcheted up. They have like a ratcheted up level of like racial politics there, where at that point, the greeters told me, you can break bread, share food with Chicanos. There's no Paisa there because they're back in Durango. You can't with kinfolk. And the thing behind that was, it's like, if you, get like a burrito one day, they're going to tell you they owe you a pack. So they're going to come at you sideways. So they have like, all these rules, like, and obviously everyone's like sitting together with their race. I actually ended up, this is the last time I was in the Maricopa County system, because I moved out here right after that. I got so lucky because it's July and August when I'm doing this time in the tents. My work assignment was the food factory. So you got to get like handcuffs. Somebody march out in a line, like maybe a mile to the building where they do all the food trays. I was in the tray assembly unit. And so while it's 105, 110 out, we're wearing thermals in a 40-degree cooler. And that was amazing. But we had some perks, like a lot of times we get ice cream with the shift, and we would be able to have as many plates for dinner as we wanted. So, everyone would like hang out and just eat and talk at the end of the day. And it was like me, a black guy, and another white kid. I think the kid was like 19. And his brother, like 6 months earlier, had been through the tents. He knew, he was like friends with all the higher ups and the Aryan skinhead woods hierarchy. And this kid was just too young to where like, he wasn't seeing the sadness in that lifestyle. He was like, yo, I'm like, fuck, I got street cred now. Everyone knows my brother. He was all about it. So we're talking, and I just made some comment like, these rules with like the race politics and don't break bread with this and that. It's just so dumb. It's like some prison ass shit. And so being as into the incarceration social hierarchy as much as he is, this kid runs and tells skinheads, like basically a shortened version, like, yeah, he's got a problem with the race rules. Yeah.
Not
So
good. Not good.
I know. I'm just sitting there trying to, I don't know. The first time I was like shaving, I was at the sink in the day room, and I feel two guys walk over. I look over, was kind of leaning in and be like, "We got a problem with the rules here." I'm like, and I gave him a quick one. I'm like, "Look, this is what I said," and there was never like obviously I was like, "Oh shit, what's about to happen?" But it was pretty quick. It was all verbal. It was like, just falling in line, whatever. I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to get in a bunch of shit over something, like I'm going to be out of here in a week. But on the way back to my tent, I walked past the tent where that kid's bunk was. He's playing spades. And I'm like, yo, bro, that was a bitch ass move to do that. Not knowing that hard rule. Like where like if someone calls you a bitch or a punk, you have to throw hands. And it's like, and there's all these layers of like, why does it have to be like expanded to all this shit? But it's like there's literally this whole thing of like, if you don't fight when the rules, code of conduct would call for it, you make your whole race look weak. It's not just like you look weak. It's like we look weak. And so this kid, and there's a bunch of people around, everybody heard it. I still don't know like that I'd said one of the big no words. Fortunately, he's a 19-year-old, very, very skinny, but like he ends up like, I don't know if he told the skins, but they found out. And so this time I'm like, oh shit, what's about to happen? But they're like, go in the showers right now. And that's not what you want to have heads of any race tell you when you're in jail or prison. And so I walked in the curtain, and there's this, I mean, he had to be like 150, 60 pounds tops. 19-year-old kid who is obligated at that, like, you are not a man and we'll kick your ass if you don't punch him, like rocking back and forth, the shower is going on behind him, like totally nervous. And he's just like, you shouldn't have called me a bitch. And it was just like barely felt it. And I just shook my head and I looked at him, and it's like, I'm sure other people that are like more serious with politics would have like encouraged me to go a different direction. I look at him, I shook my head, I'm like, bro, I'm out of here in 5 days, and just walked away. And I got away with it. And later on,
wow,
nicer skins, he sat down. He's like, just so you know, it's like we're helping these guys by preparing them for the prison bid that they're eventually going to do. So that could have ended a lot worse. The part of trip one to Durango that I skipped over earlier, and we talked about this before, was, so after you get through the horseshoe, you go to your pod. And at that point, like a lot of times you just want to sleep. You're like, I have a bed, I'm going to be fed at regular times again. So I slept as much as I could, but my appetite is just getting worse and worse. And so like I wake up after napping for a couple hours. No one's in my pod. There's 4 bunks, so me and 3 other people. And I just see this carton of milk staring back at me with all its calcium and vitamin D and calories and nourishment. And there was no logical thought process, like milk, drink. And so I took it. I think I went to the bathroom real quick, or maybe to down it. Somebody saw. And so this is the first time I understand like how serious these race politics are. So they had a meeting between the Paisa and the Woods, and they negotiated my punishment, my discipline for this. And I wasn't told, obviously, but that night when they're like, yeah, we need you to clean the bathroom is your chore tonight. I'm like, I do not think this is going to end well for me. And it could have ended a lot worse, but it was like, sure. And it's like out of a movie. Like I go in there, mop in hand. I look around, I'm like, everyone's leaving. Like, this is what I expected. And so the Paisa, they call their enforcer the car now. Everyone else calls, all the other races call them torpedoes. So what they negotiated was that the Cardinal for the Paisa, who was like, he totally, like, he looked like a little Latino boxer, even had a little ducktail in back and shit, like short but cut. And so he comes in with the torpedo for the whites. And first, the Paisa guy was like, they agreed. I'm glad they negotiated this for me. They agreed no face shots. It was all going to be like gut, body blows. So Cardinal comes up, boom, 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 3 quick ones. I fall to the ground. It knocked the wind out of me. Had some bruising and stuff. Nothing too crazy. And then it was like the torpedo of the whites, which is like, they could have surely found a more intimidating person. It kind of looks like he worked in a head shop or some shit. But it was like so reluctant, like, I don't want to hit another white. And he's just like, and it wasn't even a real punch, but it's like I got off with that as my punishment. They moved me to the next pod over, which went a lot smoother. There was one guy, Flacco, that was there. He's like, I heard what you did over there, boy. You're a little fucking thief, huh? But outside of that, it was a lot smoother. However, I was like, it was the most heartbreaking incarceration when I had. I was like so earnestly wanting that commissary. I was like, oh my God, my parents will bail me out, but they put money on my books. And I didn't grab my ID when I got moved to their pod. And so when they're doing head count every day, it's like, oh, don't worry about it. You got your picture. But no one told me you have to have that for commissaries. So like when commissary, it's like in my head, it's like, this is like first time to Disney, like, oh my God. And it's right there in the, in the little rolling case. And then I find out I can't get it without the ID. I literally, it wasn't even like, you need to stop that or we're going to fucking put you in solitary. The female DO that was like handing out the commissary, she comes back into the bathroom while I'm punching the concrete wall. She's like, it's gonna be okay. And then this is where the racial politics can work out in your favor, because as a part of the Wood family of Caucasian people, they, knowing that I didn't have commissary, some stepped up and like, well, bro, you have this honey bun or this or that. But that was like, I have never been so heartbroken over honey buns and Reese's peanut butter cups, whatever that.
What was it? The green was the breakfast still green bologna when you were in there?
That's like, it was so luxurious when I got to the tents for the second half of that last day, because we would get, we got 3 meals a day, but like in Durango, again, with my appetite raging packets, like 1 in the morning and 1 at night. And if you don't have commissary, just imagine you're eating lunch. And like, it's so bad. It's like when you're, I think in general, I don't know if you experienced this, but like a lot of times when you first go to like downtown Phoenix jail, they've got a lot more peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and that shit becomes like caviar, like a delicacy once you start getting the breakfasts of like the green bologna and just the most like, I still remember the taste, just the most tasteless, like, what the fuck type of wheat is this bread? And what else did they give us? I don't remember, but yeah, that it was like the most disgusting breakfast you could have ever had. And it was like, and that so sums up Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Is like, he was proud of that green bologna. It was, and I'm sure you've covered this before, but like one thing that's important for people to understand that don't know about that much about Joe Arpaio is like, for what, decades, this guy like played into the fears of every like World War II generation person and boomer, that he was going to protect us from the Mexicans and the drugs, and this was for our own good. And in the midst of it all, it's just like the human rights violations are really like crazy. And the brown recluse spiders in the tents, I knew this guy who like, he claims, seems like an honest enough guy. He claims that like sometimes judges will be harder on ex-military because they hold him to a higher standard. So this guy, I don't even know the details, but it's something about a couch and his ex-girlfriend. That's why he's in jail, because he took the couch. So the first time when I did the week and a half, stole the milk and all that, I was in his pod and he had gotten moved in from the tents because he got bit by a brown recluse. And I didn't know up until this point that the brown recluse venom basically eats away your skin. You know, it just corrodes your flesh. And so initially this guy's hand was like swollen up like a grapefruit. I happened to be in the same pod as him 6 months later. And at that point, it was like the swelling was gone. It was like a 3rd-degree burn scar. You know what I'm saying? This is like, you know, I'm sure his life went on and I hope he's happy in a life state. But it's like, it's just a classic example of like, that's what people are put through. And this guy is over a couch with his ex-girlfriend. And you and I have talked about this aspect of it too. I hope it's changed out there. But like that old school law and order type dynamic, it was like, and it wasn't just me, you tell with other people too. For a lot of people, it made you like the verbal or, you know, physical abuse, you get that. It's like you get out of there like almost like the inner animal is like revved up, and you know, and it's not like I know for, you know, some people are able to get in their substance abuse programs if they're doing a longer sentence in county, but it was really not conducive to getting my life together, and it was very traumatizing. And it's like after, you know, going through that a few times, it's like there starts to be like a dehumanizing aspect of it, you know. So it just really like exacerbated where I was at with kind of giving up on life, you know, with drugs. And so like after that last 30-day thing where it was like half in Durango, half in the tents, by then, after 2 years on meth, it was like, well, and I dabbled a little bit with like snorting heroin. It's like, well, might as well become a junkie too. So I got to detox in jail, but I finally divulged that to my dad because he could tell that things are going from bad to worse. So eventually, like when he was out of town, I'm like, I'm on heroin or whatever. And rightfully so, he long story short, at the end of living in LA in 2000 to 2004, someone that I had met working at Beverly Hills BMW had a copious supply of benzos and opiates, and I ended up moving back to Arizona because I had gotten so far gone on that stuff. But like, so my dad took me, this was pre-Obamacare, I didn't have insurance. He literally came to LA from Phoenix. We packed up my stuff and then went camping in Central Coast, California. I was all like, you know, in addict, like blame everything on other people mode. So like this woman she very much facilitated me becoming an addict, but it was her fault. So surely if she just got 2 bottles of Oxycontin refilled, I'm entitled to 1 because I got a taper. So I take that, I go camping and I'm slowly tapering down. But my dad saw over the course of this that being with, especially if it's, you know, loved one, your son, it's like, it's an awful experience to be a third party to, you know, especially if like you love them, you can't do anything about it, you know, just gonna kind of let it play out. But, you know, so I've experienced it the first time, all the writhing and the restless leg stuff and the sweating, and rightfully so. When I told him a couple years later I've been doing heroin, he's like, working in Florida at that point, and he's like, I am not going to watch you go through that again, but if you can detox, you can come out here, try, you know, get away from all the bad influences out there, and at least take a break. And so he came like a week before I got released from the tents, and he's like, well, your detox is going to do this. So I ended up coming out to Florida to visit. It's like Gilligan's Island. It's like the 3-hour tour that I'm still here 14 years later. But at first I came out here and I managed, it was like I was away from all my drug connections. I was like, we were living right on Hollywood Beach, and like Florida was just new. It was like, you know, about beautiful chicks and tropical beaches, not like, wow, there's a lot of drug problems here. You know, I hadn't really seen as much of the dark side, but I did soon enough. I met, like, I started playing poker a lot when I came out here, because played blackjack. They didn't have legal blackjack yet, so, except for the casino cruises. So I meet some like former AAA baseball player at the casino one night, and like, as we're cashing, I was like, "You want to go to Gulfstream?" I'm like, what's Gulfstream? It's another casino up the street. But like, we're walking and talking. He gives me a Xanax, and then he just like, we're like at like ground zero for like the Florida crack cocaine scene. And I had tried it before, but it was like literally when that night, it was like when people say like, oh, I was addicted from the first hit. It didn't happen with the other hits. A lot of time I was on meth, and it was just like, you're on this long-term high, and then crack is just like, boom, and then you go back down. You're still high. But this was like, I experienced the bell ringer I heard about. And it was just like, I was fucked. It was like instant possession. And I remember like so many days being like, don't. It's like, I ride my bike like a couple miles to get down to the shitty part of town with all the hustling. And I remember so many times being like, don't do it, Doug. Do not do it. Get your life. And it was just like, it was like even worse than meth. There was like the demonic call. And so it only took like 3 months before I got arrested. I'm pretty sure it was a sting operation. Got arrested in alley for like a $10 rock. And I had my experiences before with like little fuck ups, and that was like a bigger fuck up. But I was not prepared when I looked at the charge sheet to see felony, you know, and to see that for the first time after like, you know, getting by with just like some misdemeanor charges where it's like, you know, especially with like time passing. Something's funny, like trespassing in a park after hours, or loitering in a park after hours, trespassing for charging myself on someone's port, whatever. But like, that was obviously a real wake up call. You know, I'm sure you remember some of the feelings that you saw when you looked over your charges. So I was given an option, and understand, like, for years before this, even if I wasn't ready, it was like, I was never like, this is the life I want to live. Like, you know, because I saw people where it's like, you're a lifetime tweaker, you know, you're a lifetime. I was always like dreaming of a day when I move past it. So by the time that happened, I was at least somewhat receptive to like, you know, doing something different. And I had the option of obviously taking a felony. I don't want to do that. I could have gone on probation, and it would have been a much more volatile situation if I like, you know, relapsed or a dirty test. The consequences could be a lot worse on probation, you know, or you could end up with the felony charge. So that was a risky venture, supposed to be a chronic relapser. The third option was to do their diversion program, their drug court program. And I could have transferred it back to Arizona, but I would have had to, like, it would have been way more expensive. I had to pay for every urinalysis drop, and Florida didn't seem like that bad of a place to be stuck. So I didn't realize at first that it's a year plus, like at least a year. It's how long it takes to get through drug court. So in finding that out, that was also a shock. Like, oh my God, that's what I signed up for. But to Broward County's credit, which is where Fort Lauderdale is, they have a whole arsenal of like programs here and support. And like I said, hopefully it's gotten better in Arizona. They had some programs back then, but just like full county run detox system, you know, it's not obvious, nothing like super fancy, doesn't need to be. It does a trick, give you the medications, get you out the drugs. And then they have it's like a sliding scale payment, 30-day treatment program, but a lot of people just end up getting free treatment. So it took not once, but twice in 2008 going through that. And there was like, you know, from there, it wasn't like I got out and I was a saint, you know, stuff, but it was like, that helped me get the tools to where over time, you know, I would get a taste of, like when I got my insurance license, I would get a taste of like what getting your shit together could do. And, you know, even if I didn't stick with the 12-step rule, but like I got like so much out of that period. And I realized so much of it was like, don't be an asshole, you know, like it's like when I was deep in my addiction, it was like really, you know, people fall into that, like everything's other people, you know, everyone else is fault and all that stuff. And I just realized, like, even though I am a very nice guy, that I saw like all these personality flaws, you know, that had developed over the year. The whole DJ thing definitely can exacerbate that, you know, because you end up with like your ego and the trappings of people like to give DJs drugs and stuff like that. But no, it was like that was kind of the turning point, you know, where like that experience, and not like my limited experience here with the jail system is like, compared to what I saw in Arizona, it's just like, it's still, you know, they're busting your balls. DOs are going to be DOs, but it's like, it's just less abusive. There's less disrespect. There's less treating people like animals, you know, just a little bit of extra mutual respect. And it's like, this is still a county or part of the state with a lot of problems, but they actually have mechanisms to help people get back on track, which is, you know, helped turn my life around. But yeah, that experience versus what I went through in Arizona was very night and day. And
you've experienced Arizona jail, you've experienced Florida jail.
Yes.
Is the rules, the racial rules in Florida, what are they like?
They're not, it's more like just informal, you know, it's like you get that level of tribalism where people just kind of flock together, you know, with their own culture, but there's none of that organized type race stuff.
So as soon as you go into a Florida jail, the AB don't come up to you and say, "Hey, Wood, you got to sit with your people."
Yeah, none of that.
There's none of that in Florida.
No, not that I witnessed, but just as a qualifier, I think it was like somewhere between 2 and 3 days before I got released because I had agreed to do drug court. The only 2 times that I've been arrested since then, very unfortunate, you know, I've talked to you a little bit about my situation with custody of my daughter, is I've had 2 occasions where both charges were dropped, but I was framed for domestic violence by my daughter's mom, who has at this point not let me see my daughter. I haven't seen her since August. But about almost a year ago, it was March 7th, I think. And a long story short, she got evicted, kind of weasel her way into staying at my place for a couple months. And then about a month in, I was like, you're starting to do that thing where you drink a little bit and mouth off. So like, while you're staying with me, no drinking. And I didn't enforce that. So early March one night, she gets a little tipsy. I had a few glasses of wine too, to where it was like, my decision making could have been better, you know, but I ended up pouring out her glass or bottle of wine because she kept mouthing off. She knocked a tumbler of wine out of my hand that like somehow didn't break on the floor. And like I left shortly after that to just let things cool down, because I kind of like, she had already done this before with like you know, false accusations. So I figured I'll get out of here. I'll go to the common bar of the street, let things cool down. And when I came back, apartment was trashed. I called the police just to try to get her out of the apartment, because it was getting scary. It was like, I felt like if I didn't do something, I was gonna end up in jail, which ended up happening anyway. But like the police came out, and as I suspected, they're like, well, she's been here over 2 weeks, so we can't do anything. You got to either evict her or get a restraining order. I'm like, I figured that might be the case. So thank you, officers, for your time. Have a good night. And then 15 minutes later, so my ex, who was like in my bed with my daughter at that point, she got up out of bed. She comes in the living room with holding my daughter, and is like yelling just all this like verbal abuse stuff, like no one like, and it's weird. She's always like, nobody likes you. It's like, ironically, she has an issue retaining friends. I have a huge like sprawling group of friends. It's almost like that's like her like weird jealousy thing. But anyway, before I get too sidetracked, this like while I'm cleaning up her mess, like stuff she broke while I was up the street. She comes out, she's yelling at me with my daughter. I'm mopping the whatever she spilled on the floor. She takes a step towards me, slips on the wet floor holding my daughter, and as soon as she falls to the ground, she's like, "Yeah, Dad, yes." And I called the police again, and I knew, I'm like, there's a slight chance this could go badly, but it ended up where like they told me like she knows exactly what to say to her, we have to arrest you. You know, that charge got dropped in October, as I knew it would, because they even had video evidence that like if you really analyze it, you see the story doesn't add up. But she is, it's just very sad. Like she used that period of time where I had a charge looming over my head to like get me in a position where like I took my lawyer's advice. I was doing supervised visits, paying like $65 to see my daughter for an hour while someone unnecessarily supervised it. I'm an amazing dad, not a perfect dad, but people that see my daughter know like how ridiculous that is. And then when the charge got dropped in October, she made herself like unavailable to be served. Like if I get her in front of a judge, all the leverage she had is gone. So first she went to Gainesville up the north end of the state. I was staying with her aunt, and ended up like getting into an altercation of some sort with her aunt's roommate. Police came out, no charges filed. DCF, Department of Children and Families, comes out. She refuses a drug test. Like forbids our daughter from like answering other questions, kind of like, you know, kicks them out as quickly as she can, and then leaves her aunts and thinks she came back down to Fort Lauderdale area. But DCF showed up the next day with an open case. That they didn't open up a case right away, but like at that point, then they had legal leverage of the state over a custody situation. She was gone, and like she doesn't answer texts anymore, as a real insult to injury type thing. A couple weeks ago, and I think I mentioned this to you, I did, on a long shot, like Hail Mary move, I contacted the visitation place, and knowing, just like as always, that it was ridiculous I had to do those, but I hadn't seen my daughter in like 6+ months. So like I wanted to see her however I could. And her mom like finally responded and said, "Yeah, we can do a visit this weekend." And I knew that I knew not to get my hopes up too much, but I'm like thinking like, wow, I might get to see my daughter for the first time in 6-7 months, a few days before Valentine's Day and a week before her 7th birthday. Didn't show up. And it's like, I was already really actively involved with music. This is really ratcheted that up a lot, because I mean it's an awful, like when people ask me how I'm doing, and they actually want a full answer, things are going really well on many levels, but it's just like the music thing kind of like is the most natural and effective way of like kind of filling that void, because it's really sad, as far as what you focus on a lot of times with the injustices, peculiarities, and absurdities of the the legal and court system. It's really, it's sad that like if you screw up, there's no shortage of actions they'll take against you to punish you. But like when, like as the victim in this, victim, I haven't got to see my daughter. It's like initially you would hope like that, even if you're like cynical about the system, that like you would get some help through the state or the police or DCF. And it's like between lack of coordination, incompetence, and just them not really seeing, it just feels like everything's like just another case on their desk. It's a very very heavy feeling to realize like there is no quick solution, and that even if there's laws being broken, there's no one that really. I've called the police, the police to try to do something about it. The court. I've called the court 3 times. I haven't gotten one call back. Yeah, like over the last couple of weeks. So, I know it'll work out long run. Once I get Max in front of a judge, things should be very good for me. But like right now, it's
Mm.
she's just on the run with my daughter. It's tragic, and I hope like she comes around, but I think there's probably like an aspect here of like my ex never knew her biological dad. And I think there's a lot of projection going on there. Like there's that she's got a void from that. She's probably got resentment. And it's like I'm like the scapegoat for all bad things in her life. So yeah, that's the depressing aspect of my current story right now. But I keeping my head up. I think like honestly, it's just to the point where multiple people told me it's like I save up to get a private eye probably and track her down. It's so lame that it's come to that, but that's where we're at.
Look, Rob, you've told your story really well. Your descriptions of the jail and all that stuff, man, absolutely mind blowing. And really appreciate you spending time with us today. So, if people want to support you or follow you on socials, where can they do that at? I'll put your links below this video.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll send those over to you. So, as you said at the beginning, in the 90s, I was known as PRG. I don't even get into that story, but I kind of like when I took 10, 15 years off DJing. I was kind of like thinking if I ever got back into it, like maybe use a different name. So now I'm DJing under Robert Purge, but it's like there's a play on words there, shit. Like after all the binging, you got to purge. But it was actually just a play on words that like friends would like playfully just like read PRG out, like we're like, "What's up, Purge?" And people started calling me Purge, and so that's where that came from. So like on Instagram, I'm Robert_Purge. Just Robert Purge on and I'll send you the links. Robert Purge on I'm TikToking now. I don't do the lip sync videos, but I've become really savvy with the social media marketing. So I got on there. Robert Purge, I have an artist page on Facebook. Bula Beats is a pop-up club that I started doing at Kava bars around town. And just real quick, so I don't know about Kava, it's a really cool not underground scene. It's a cool like I was gonna say hipster scene. It's a wide range of people, but like with this being a state with a lot of substance abuse issues, a big part of the Kava scene is that with Kava and Kratom, you can get a buzz, but they're not like intoxicating. Kratom is physically habit forming. Do your research, but what started out is like, hey, I had a Kava bars on DJing again. I started playing a few gigs at Kava bars, and it really took off to where it's like now I'm at the point where I'm like gonna start trying to get into clubs and stuff, but rather than trying to jump on other people's stuff, I feel like it took off enough to where like there was a demand for like entertainment at Kava bars, and like this pop-up like house and rave beat thing worked out really well. So Bula Beats is the name of that. And I'll send you the link for Patreon. So I'm starting to use that more, but I got to change the name to Robert Purge. But yeah, and I am currently involved with DJing as much as I can be, making my own original music. Like before I ever started DJing or producing beats, like since '91, I was playing alternative and punk bands. So I had that going on, and both the DJing and that is both like the same Facebook page. I'm kind of like merging those two worlds together a little bit more. Whereas like in the '90s, like I had my punk band and I had my rave life. But on top of that, I released my first record with Swell back in like 2000, and I've been working on stuff on and off since then, just haven't been releasing anything. So over the next, let's just say year, this will all be on my social media pages, obviously. I'm going to be recording an EP to start out, an album of like the all rock stuff. I'm going to be releasing a bunch of my live stuff on like I always kind of like the live recording thing better for DJing, because it's like just sitting there recording mix is kind of sterile, you know. So I'm going through all these live mixes, pulling that up, and then I'm going to start releasing like there's some really good, like not just electronic stuff, but like, you know, music that's sequenced on a computer, whether it be hip hop, trip hop, house, trance, and it's just been kind of like I've had all these tracks to like not really collecting dust, but just like where I've been waiting for the right time to start releasing them. So it's like over the next year, 2 years, hopefully I'm gonna have a lot of stuff coming out. So I will send you those links. I will also, I wanted to apologize real quick. I don't know if you remember through Lonnie, I said when she was talking to you when you're still in prison, I said I was going to send you a mix tape. Never did. So
oh, don't sweat it, man.
This is like, I mean, how surreal is this stuff? I mean,
isn't it
last
surreal?
time I saw you, it was 2000. How much like you were skinny little Mustafa, like how much less did you weigh? Because you look so healthy and like face now. I remember at the end there, man.
I think I was like 160 pounds and now I'm like 200 pounds, is it?
Yeah, that was my thing. Like back in the 90s, I couldn't really break 160, 165.
Yeah, I was stuck at once in the 160s, yeah. All right, so Rob, I wish you all the best with your music. Hope you get to see your daughter soon. That's really sad. And for the people watching this, all of Rob's links will be in the description box below the video. If you want to check his stuff out, if you've got any questions for him, and please let us know what you thought about this interview today with my friend from so long ago. And also, if you'd like to see us interview more people from the Arizona rave party crazy days, because there are tons of them out there, and a lot of them have got different perspectives, different stories. You know, they met Wild Man when I wasn't there. There's all kinds of shit that yeah, still waiting to be told.
It's like a reality TV show,
isn't it?
Yeah, I would love that if you started interviewing some other people, because it's like, you know, we had our own little unique universe back then,
didn't we? Yeah.
But this is so surreal and so great to catch up with you after all this time.
Right, I'm going to stop recording. Hold on, don't go anywhere. Let's see, recording. How do I stop recording? Where is it? Stop video. Oh, there it is. Stop recording.